Does it hurt here? James's warm hand gently cradled my swollen ankle, his touch sending a shiver of warmth through me despite the cool evening air. It was the third day of our autumn trip to the Blue Ridge Mountains, and on the way down the trail, I had twisted my ankle. Without a moment's hesitation, James had insisted on carrying me the rest of the way back to the lodge. A little, I admitted, my voice barely a whisper. But, your hand is so warm, it actually feels soothing. My voice trembled slightly, and I hoped he couldn't tell how much his closeness was affecting me. The area around your ankle bone is pretty swollen, he said, his voice low and concerned. His examination was so careful, so tender. What about up here? His hand moved slowly, deliberately, from my ankle up to my calf. The gentle pressure was exquisite. Oh. I guess that spot was tighter than I realized. Your thigh muscles are tense, too. Probably from the long hike. Would you mind if I tried to massage it a little? It might help. Yes, I breathed, my face flushing with a heat that had nothing to do with the injury. Please. His hands began to work the muscles in my thigh, his touch firm yet incredibly gentle. But it quickly became clear this was more than just a massage. It was a caress, an exploration filled with a quiet affection that was growing between us. Our eyes met and held, and in that long, silent moment, the world outside the room seemed to fade away. Is this all right? He asked, his voice husky as he carefully raised a hand to brush a stray strand of hair from my cheek. I leaned into his touch, my heart pounding a rhythm I hadn't felt in years. I feel the same way you do, I whispered. He leaned in slowly, giving me every chance to pull away, and then his lips met mine. The kiss was soft, tentative at first, then deepened with a longing that mirrored my own. He pulled back just enough to look into my eyes, his own searching for confirmation. Are you absolutely sure? He asked, his voice thick with emotion. Yes, I answered, my voice clear and steady. I want this. As the setting sun bathed the room in a golden, hazy light, we came together with a tenderness and care that spoke of shared loneliness and newfound hope. It wasn't the fiery passion of youth, but something deeper, more meaningful. It was the quiet, beautiful beginning of a true love, found in the autumn of our lives. It all started in a cozy little lodge tucked away in the mountains of North Carolina, where the crisp autumn air was already hinting at the coming winter. My name is Carol, and at 52, I was a recently retired high school art teacher. I'd stepped down in March of this year, after 25 years in the classroom. I had loved my job, I truly had, but the world of education was changing so fast. I found myself feeling disconnected, watching my students stare into the glowing screens of their phones, their interest in the messy, beautiful world of art fading. 2 years before that, my 20-year marriage had quietly come to an end. My husband and I, after our 2 boys were grown and off to college, simply realized we were walking down 2 completely different paths. There was no big fight, no dramatic blow-up. We just drifted apart. The divorce was amicable, but the silence of an empty house was deafening at first. My sons were busy building their own lives, one with his career and the other with graduate school. This trip, this journey into the heart of the fall foliage, was the first I had ever taken completely on my own. My friends had all tried to talk me out of it, worried I'd be lonely or unsafe. But I knew I needed this. I needed to prove to myself that I could start a new chapter. That first evening, I walked into the lodge's rustic dining room and chose a small table by the window. Outside, the mountains were ablaze with the colors of the sunset, a masterpiece of reds and golds that took my breath away. Eating alone felt strange at first, a little conspicuous, but I was slowly getting used to it. I was studying the menu, trying to decide between the grilled trout and the pot roast, when the door opened. And in walked James. He was 56, an architect who, I would later learn, had lost his wife of 30 years, Helen, to cancer 3 years ago. He had put his entire life on hold to care for her, but in the end, he had to let her go. His 2 sons were married, with children of their own, leaving him to wander the halls of a large, empty house that felt heavier each day. His passion for his work had dimmed, and this trip was something his college buddies had practically forced him to take, hoping it would lift his spirits. James scanned the dining room, looking for a place to sit. It was a weekday, so it wasn't crowded, but the other tables were occupied by couples and families. His eyes landed on me, the solitary woman by the window. I must have looked approachable, because he made his way over, his steps hesitant but purposeful. I noticed his neatly styled gray hair and the kind, intelligent eyes that met mine. "Excuse me," he said, his voice gentle and polite. "Would you mind if I sat here?" I looked up at him. He had the dignified air of a true gentleman, probably in his mid-50s, and clearly traveling alone as well. "No, not at all," I said, gesturing to the empty chair. "Please, sit down." We ordered our meals and ate in a comfortable silence, occasionally catching each other's eye and sharing a small, warm smile. I found myself drawn to his calm, respectful demeanor, and I could tell he was intrigued by me as well. As we were finishing our meal, he was the first to speak. "Are you traveling by yourself?" I nodded, taking a sip of my iced tea. "Yes. I came to see the fall colors." "It looks like you're on your own, too." "I am," he confirmed, then paused for a moment before adding, "Well, I hope you have a wonderful evening." It was a brief exchange, but in that moment, we both sensed a shared experience, a similar chapter in our lives. As I walked back to my room, I felt a flutter of excitement in my chest, a feeling I hadn't experienced in such a long, long time. In the 2 years since my divorce, I hadn't felt anything quite like it. In his own room, James was feeling a similar sense of surprise, a strange and unfamiliar warmth that he hadn't felt since Helen. The next morning, at 8 o'clock, we ran into each other again in the lobby. I was dressed in hiking gear, a small backpack slung over my shoulder. I was a little nervous about hiking alone after so many years, but I was also determined to do it, to reclaim a piece of my own independence. James was sitting on a plush sofa, looking over a trail map. I could see a flicker of memory in his eyes, and I later learned he was thinking of the many hikes he and Helen used to take together. Our eyes met, and we exchanged a friendly greeting. "You're getting an early start," I said, breaking the ice. He folded the map and smiled. "I was thinking of heading up to Pinnacle Peak. I heard the colors are at their absolute best up there right now." "Oh, really?" My eyes lit up. I was considering that trail myself. A spark of hope appeared in his eyes. He'd been feeling a bit daunted by the prospect of a long, solitary hike. "Well," he said, a little hesitantly, "if it wouldn't be an intrusion, would you like to go together?" I paused for a second. My plan had been to do this alone, to be completely self-reliant. But the pleasant feeling from last night lingered. And honestly, having a companion on a challenging trail didn't seem like such a bad idea. "I'd like that very much," I said, a genuine smile spreading across my face. I was a little worried about getting lost on my own. We ended up having breakfast together. Over a simple country breakfast of eggs, bacon, and grits at the lodge, we started to learn a little more about each other. James told me he'd been an architect for nearly 30 years, but lately, he'd been passing the bigger projects on to his younger colleagues. The new generation of architects has a much more creative spark these days, I think, he admitted with a humble smile. I told him about my 25 years teaching art, and how I'd grown weary of the rapid changes in education. It felt like the kids were more interested in their phones than in a paintbrush, I confessed. So, what are your plans now? He asked, his interest genuine. I haven't quite figured that out yet, I said honestly. I'd like to get back to my own painting, maybe start a small studio. I looked at him. What about you? It's funny, I'm in a similar boat. I spent so many years focused on my work, I'm not even sure what I enjoy doing anymore. We discovered a powerful common ground. We were both standing at a crossroads, searching for a new direction in life. That shared vulnerability made it easy to open up, to feel a sense of comfort with each other. After breakfast, we got ready for our hike. I noticed how thoughtfully James packed our supplies, making sure we had plenty of water and snacks. I, in turn, tucked a small first aid kit into my backpack. Just in case, I said with a smile. We both appreciated the quiet, considerate nature of the other. The trail up to Pinnacle Peak was absolutely breathtaking. It was mid-October, and the autumn foliage was in its full, glorious peak. The mountainside was a tapestry of brilliant reds, fiery oranges, and golden yellows, all woven together under a clear blue sky. It looked like a painting come to life. As an art teacher, I couldn't help but stop every few minutes to just soak it all in. The colors are just magnificent, I murmured, more to myself than to him. It's like nature's own palette. James looked at the scenery, then back at me, a look of admiration on his face. You know, I've always thought the leaves were pretty, but hearing you describe it, I'm seeing it in a whole new way. Oh, you can't say that, I teased gently. You're an architect. You're a master of spatial aesthetics. He gave a self-deprecating laugh. These days, it's all about function and budget. I think my artistic sense has gotten a little rusty. The trail was steeper than we'd expected, but we fell into a natural rhythm, matching each other's pace. Whenever I started to look tired, James would offer me his water bottle without a word. And whenever I spotted a particularly beautiful view, I'd point it out to him. Look over there, I said at one point, pointing to a clearing. The way the leaves are falling, doesn't it look like it's snowing color? He followed my gaze. A gentle breeze was sending a cascade of golden leaves spiraling through the air, a truly magical sight. It's incredible, he said softly. If I had been alone, I probably would have just walked right past it. We took breaks along the way, our conversations flowing easily. James told me about his early days as an architect, full of big dreams and ambitious designs. I shared stories from my teaching career, the moments of breakthrough with a struggling student that made all the challenges worthwhile. Around noon, we stopped for lunch. James pulled out some turkey and Swiss sandwiches he'd had the lodge pack for us. I told them I was going alone, but the cook insisted. He trailed off, a shadow passing over his face. He'd almost mentioned his wife. It's okay, I said gently. You were about to talk about your wife, weren't you? You must miss her terribly. He looked at me, his eyes filled with gratitude for my understanding. The first couple of years were very hard. But now, I'm trying to hold on to the beautiful memories we made. His openness gave me the courage to share a piece of my own story. After my divorce, being on my own felt so strange at first. It was a kind of loneliness I wasn't prepared for. "And how is it now?" he asked. I looked at him, at the beautiful mountain around us. "I'm adjusting. And sometimes, like today, I have a very pleasant surprise." Our eyes met and held for a moment longer than usual. We both felt it, a subtle shift, a new connection forming between us. By mid-afternoon, we reached the summit of Pinnacle Peak. The view from the overlook was truly spectacular. A seemingly endless sea of mountains, all painted in autumn hues, stretched out before us. It was so beautiful it literally took my breath away. For a long time, we just stood there in silence, completely captivated by the grandeur of it all. The view from that overlook is something I will never forget. The layers of rolling hills, draped in fall colors, looked like a classical landscape painting. I couldn't stop taking pictures with my phone, trying to capture the perfect composition, the perfect light. James just watched me with a gentle smile on his face. He said my look of intense concentration was beautiful. "Would you like me to take one of you?" he offered. "Oh, no, that's okay. I was just taking a few for myself, a souvenir of my solo trip." "But you have to have a proper photo in a place like this," he insisted, gently taking the phone from my hand. I felt a little awkward posing. It had been so long since someone had taken my picture. "Just smile naturally," he coached. "There. That's perfect." He took several shots, capturing me from different angles, my genuine smile framed by the stunning backdrop. When I looked at the photos, I was amazed. Wow. I didn't know I could look like that. "You're a beautiful woman, Carol." "The camera just agrees with me," he said, his compliment so sincere it made my cheeks flush. We sat together on a bench at the overlook, the cool autumn wind feeling crisp and refreshing on our faces. "This is just wonderful," I said, meaning every word. If I had come up here alone, I don't think I would have felt this sense of peace. "I know exactly what you mean," James replied, his expression soft. "It's been a long time since I've felt this relaxed." On the way back down, James was the one to broach the subject of the next day. "If you're free tomorrow," he began, "I was thinking of exploring another area. Would you be interested?" "Where did you have in mind?" "What about Laurel Falls or the Valley Trail along the creek?" I hesitated for only a moment before nodding. "Yes, that sounds lovely. I saw pictures of it in a guidebook, and it looked beautiful." As we walked back to the lodge, the small space between us seemed to shrink. We walked side by side, our conversation now easy and familiar. It felt completely natural to decide to have dinner together again. At the lodge restaurant, we ordered a hearty meal of roasted chicken and local vegetables. "The food here is amazing," I commented. "Everything tastes so fresh." After dinner, we sat on the lodge's wide terrace with cups of hot tea. The night sky was a blanket of brilliant stars, a sight you just don't get in the city. "I can't believe how many there are," I said in awe, tilting my head back. "You definitely don't see a sky like this back in Philadelphia," he agreed. We sat in comfortable silence, watching the stars, a quiet understanding growing between us, a mutual affection deepening with every shared moment. On the morning of our third day, the atmosphere between us was even more relaxed. The day we had spent together had become something special for both of us. We planned to hike to Laurel Falls, a trail that followed a winding creek through the woods. James was even more prepared today. He had packed snacks he thought I would like and even brought a thermos of hot chamomile tea. I felt my own spirits were brighter, my smile easier. "My goodness, when did you prepare all this?" I asked, touched by his thoughtfulness. "I got up a little early," he said with a shy smile. "I figured everything tastes better when you share it." His kindness made my heart ache in the best possible way. "I feel like I'm just taking advantage of your generosity," I said. "Not at all. I'm enjoying this just as much as you are." The trail to Laurel Falls had a different kind of beauty. The sound of the clear water bubbling over the rocks was incredibly peaceful. I closed my eyes as we walked, just listening. That sound, it's so calming. It feels like it's washing everything clean. "I know," he said. "I think I needed this more than I realized. A break from city life." We took our time, stopping often to rest and admire the scenery. James was always watching out for me, making sure I didn't trip on a loose rock or a slippery root. A few times, he offered me his hand to help me over a difficult patch. Each time his skin touched mine, my heart would give a little leap. We found a large, flat rock by the creek to have our lunch. I had brought a container of my homemade chili, and James had brought fresh fruit from the lodge. "I made this myself," I said, a little nervously. "I hope it's okay." "It's more than okay, it's delicious," he said, his expression one of genuine delight. "It's been a long time since I've had a home-cooked meal like this." He looked down for a moment, and I knew he was thinking of Helen again. Over lunch, our conversation went deeper. "What was your marriage like?" he asked gently. "The first 10 years were wonderful," I began, pausing to gather my thoughts. "We were in love, the kids were small, it was a happy time." I sighed. But as time went on, we both got so wrapped up in our careers. We just stopped connecting. "You grew apart?" "Yes. It got to the point where we felt more like roommates living in the same house." James nodded in understanding. "Helen and I were close, right up to the very end. I think that's what made it so hard to say goodbye." "I envy that," I said softly. "A love like that." "You'll find it again someday," he said, his words full of sincerity. I looked at him then, really looked at him, and our eyes locked. In that gaze, we both acknowledged the unspoken feelings that were blossoming between us. In the afternoon, we made it all the way to the falls. The roar of the water as it cascaded down the rocks was magnificent. We stood side by side, watching the powerful display of nature. Our shoulders brushed, a simple touch that was suddenly charged with meaning. "It's incredible," I said. "Yes," he agreed. "You can really feel the power of nature here." On the walk back, James found his courage. "Carol," he began, "how do you feel when you're with me?" "I feel good," I answered honestly. "Very comfortable. And happy." "Me too," he said, a relieved smile spreading across his face. "I haven't felt this way in a very long time." We were finally starting to put our feelings into words, taking a careful, hopeful step towards something new. It was around 4 in the afternoon on that third day, on our way back from the falls, that it happened. We were both tired but happy after a perfect day. I was scrolling through the pictures on my phone, smiling at the ones of James and me together. "These photos came out so well," I said, turning to show him. "Let me see." We were walking side by side, our heads bent over the small screen. The stone steps on this part of the trail were slick with damp leaves. Distracted by the photos, I didn't see the uneven rock in my path. My foot caught, and for a heart-stopping second, I lost my balance. James reached out and grabbed me, stopping my fall, but it was too late. My right ankle had already twisted awkwardly beneath me. "Oh!" I cried out, a sharp pain shooting up my leg. "My ankle." James immediately guided me to a nearby boulder and helped me sit down. "Where does it hurt?" "Let me see." I carefully took off my hiking boot. The area around my ankle was already starting to swell. "I think it's a bad sprain," he said, his face etched with worry. "We should get you to a doctor." No, I'll be fine," I insisted, embarrassed by the fuss. "You won't be fine if you don't take care of it properly. It could get much worse." His tone was firm but kind. "First, let's get you back to the lodge for some ice." "But how? You can't walk on it." He thought for a moment, then turned his back to me. "I'll carry you." "Oh no, you can't. I'm too heavy." "Don't be silly. Get on." When he spoke with such authority, I found I couldn't argue. I reluctantly wrapped my arms around his neck and let him lift me onto his back. Leaning against his broad, strong back, I could feel the warmth of his body through his shirt. It had been so long since I'd felt a man's touch, a man's strength. "Are you sure you're okay?" I whispered near his ear. "Perfectly fine," he grunted, his voice strained only slightly from the effort. "You're not heavy at all." He carried me carefully down the rest of the trail. It took us nearly 30 minutes to get back to the lodge, and with every step he took, I felt a wave of gratitude and a deepening affection for this kind, wonderful man. He carried me all the way to my room and gently set me down on the sofa. "I'll be right back with some ice," he said, disappearing out the door. He returned moments later with an ice pack wrapped in a towel and carefully placed it on my swollen ankle. "How does that feel?" "The cold should help with the swelling." After about 15 minutes, the swelling had gone down a little. James removed the ice pack and took a closer look at my foot. "Now for a massage," he said. "We need to get the circulation going." "You don't have to do that. It's already feeling better." "No, if you don't treat a sprain properly, it can bother you for years." He began to gently massage the area around my ankle. His touch was so precise, so knowing. "Does it hurt a lot here?" he asked, his fingers gently working the tender area around the bone. "A little," I admitted, "but it also feels good." His warm hands seemed to be melting the pain away. "Let's check the Achilles tendon, too." His hand moved slowly from my ankle up to my calf, his thumbs pressing into the tight muscle. "You're very tense here. I guess the long hike did a number on you." My voice was shaky when I replied. "I suppose so." His touch was more intimate, more tender than I had ever expected. "The tension in your thigh can affect your ankle, too. It's all connected," he said softly, his hands moving just above my knee. "If it's all right with you." I could only nod, my words caught in my throat. He began to gently massage my lower thigh. "How about here?" "Oh, yes, that spot was very tight," I managed to say, my face burning. His touch was becoming more and more delicate, more deliberate. It was no longer just a massage, it was a caress, filled with unspoken affection. The air in the room grew thick with a new, palpable energy. He stopped and looked up at me. I met his gaze, my heart hammering in my chest. "Carol," he said, his voice low and rich. "Yes?" I whispered back. He reached up and gently cupped my cheek, his thumb stroking my skin. I closed my eyes, savoring the feeling. "Is this okay?" he whispered. I nodded again, unable to speak. He leaned down and kissed me. It was a kiss full of warmth and tenderness, a question and an answer all in one. I melted into it, my body responding to a feeling I thought I'd lost forever. As the kiss deepened, our arms found their way around each other. He gently helped me to my feet. "Is your ankle okay?" he murmured against my lips. "I don't feel a thing right now," I whispered, wrapping my arms around his neck. We looked at each other, a silent understanding passing between us, and slowly made our way to the bedroom. I forgot all about my injury, my world narrowing to the man beside me. As we entered the room, the last rays of the setting sun streamed through the window, filling the space with a warm, golden glow. He led me to the edge of the bed and sat me down, his eyes searching mine one last time. "Are you absolutely sure?" "Yes," I said, my voice filled with a certainty that came from the very core of my being. "I want this." Slowly, carefully, we undressed one another, our movements unhurried, as if we were handling something precious and fragile. The warmth of his skin against mine sent a tremor through me. He wrapped his arms around me, pulling me close. "We'll take our time," he whispered into my hair. I buried my face in his chest, breathing him in. That night, we made love with a tenderness and a depth of feeling that transcended the physical. It was a communion of two lonely souls, a quiet healing of past hurts, and the promise of a new beginning. The next morning, warm sunlight filtered through the lace curtains, wrapping the room in a gentle embrace. I woke up first and turned to look at James, sleeping peacefully beside me. Last night felt like a dream, but the solid, comforting presence of the man next to me was wonderfully real. I never thought, at 52, that I would ever feel this way again. Listening to the steady rhythm of his breathing, a profound sense of peace settled over me, chasing away the last shadows of the loneliness I had lived with for 2 years. He stirred and his eyes fluttered open. "Good morning," he said, his voice still husky with sleep. "Good morning," I replied with a shy smile. "Did you sleep well?" "Better than I have in years." He propped himself up on an elbow, his expression full of concern. "How's the ankle?" "Much better. I think you worked some kind of magic on it last night." We both laughed, a warm, easy sound that filled the room. "You don't have any regrets, do you?" he asked, his voice serious now. "None at all," I said, reaching for his hand. "In fact, thank you." "I never thought I would feel this way again, either," he confessed. "Who says there's an age limit on love?" He leaned over and gave me a soft, lingering kiss. Getting ready for the day felt as natural as if we'd been doing it for years. There was an easy rhythm between us. "I'll make the coffee," he offered. "I'll make the toast," I replied. As we prepared a simple breakfast together, a quiet joy filled my heart. Over our meal, we started to talk about what would come next. "When we get back to Philadelphia, can we keep seeing each other?" James asked, his vulnerability touching me deeply. Of course, I said without hesitation. This is just the beginning. You have to come over to my house. I want to cook for you. And I want to see you paint, he added, his eyes shining. We made plans, not in a rush, but with the slow, steady confidence of two people who knew they had found something real. Do you think we were too hasty? I asked, a flicker of doubt crossing my mind. He took my hand and squeezed it reassuringly. Carol, at our age, we know what real feelings are. We don't have time to waste on games. I nodded, my fears melting away under his steady gaze. By the fourth day, my ankle was almost completely healed. After a few gentle stretches, I could walk on it without any pain. We were a couple now, falling into the roles as if we'd been practicing for a lifetime. We walked hand in hand around the lodge grounds. I keep thinking about last night, I confessed, my cheeks growing warm. Me too, he said, pulling me closer. If this is a dream, I hope I never wake up. We decided to take a drive to a nearby lake. James rented a car, and we enjoyed the scenic route, the conversation flowing as easily as the winding road. What kind of music do you like? He asked. I've always been a fan of classic ballads. The emotional ones. He turned on the radio, and a soft, romantic melody filled the car. At the lake, we sat on a bench and watched the light dance on the water. The reflection of the autumn trees on the placid surface was like a watercolor painting. Take my picture here, I asked, and he happily obliged. This time, we took several photos together, our arms around each other, our smiles bright and genuine. These are our first couple photos, he said with a laugh. I guess they are, I replied, my heart full. We had lunch at a famous local barbecue joint, sharing a platter of food and growing closer with every bite. In the afternoon, we drove up to a scenic overlook that offered a panoramic view of the entire mountain range. What a magnificent view, I breathed. I'm so glad we came here. We stood there for a long time, just taking it all in, my head resting on his shoulder. It was a moment of pure, unadulterated happiness. On the morning of our fifth day, it was time to check out. As I packed my suitcase, a wave of sadness washed over me. These past few days had been a dream, and I was afraid to wake up. It's really over, isn't it? I said, my voice small. James came up behind me and wrapped his arms around my waist. It's not the end, Carol. It's the beginning. I'm just scared that when we get back to the city, everything will be different, I admitted. He turned me around to face him, his hands holding my shoulders firmly. Why would it be? I won't let it be different. What we have is real. Do you really think so? I'll prove it to you, he promised. We had one last breakfast at the lodge, making plans for our life back in Philadelphia. You'll call me every day, right? I asked, needing the reassurance. Of course. First thing in the morning and last thing at night. Won't I be a bother? Never. In fact, I wish I could call you more. After checking out, he walked me to my car. Drive safe, he said. And call me the second you get home. You too, James. Be careful. We held each other in a final, long embrace, neither of us wanting to let go. I'll see you in 1 week, he asked. Yes. It's a date. We finally pulled apart, and I got into my car. I watched his car in my rearview mirror until it disappeared from sight, my heart both aching with goodbye and soaring with the promise of hello. A week later, we met at a quiet cafe in Philadelphia. I was in my everyday clothes, but James said I looked more beautiful than ever. He was dressed casually, and seeing him in this new context felt both strange and wonderful. That was the longest week of my life, I said, stirring my coffee. Tell me about it, he replied, reaching across the table to take my hand. Even with our calls every day, I missed you like crazy. To anyone else, we were just another middle-aged couple on a date. But to us, it was everything. The trip feels like a dream, I said. But this, he said, squeezing my hand, this is real. And it's even better. We talked for hours, catching up on the week we'd spent apart. I told him I'd cautiously mentioned to my friends that I'd met someone special. He said he was planning to tell his sons soon. What do you think they'll say? I asked, a familiar worry creeping in. They might be surprised at first, but in the end, they'll just want their dad to be happy. And I'm sure your boys will feel the same way about their mom. After coffee, we took a long walk through a park along the river. The late autumn air was crisp, and the scenery was beautiful in its own urban way. So, what happens now? I asked. We take it slow, he said. We get to know each other. No pressure. You'll come to my place, I'll come to yours. I still want to see your paintings, and I owe you a home-cooked meal. We decided to see each other every weekend, and whenever we could on weeknights, even if it was just for a quick cup of coffee. I never thought I'd feel this kind of excitement.